This morning I had the idea about energy and power. This last week has been difficult for me in ways, and it came to me, or I was reminded, of course, that it's the same energy that powers any emotional, spiritual, energetic, even, and then of course physical in the end. It's the same energy that powers all of it. And the energy is well, there's different ways to look at fuel and energy and how our avatar moves and what gives us the energy to do anything. We have, systemic energy, endemic energy. We have, a system, the body, the avatar we exist within. It creates its own energy. It's, electrical based, water based system. It creates its own primary water every day. I think 2 to 3 liters, if I recall. So even without drinking any liquids whatsoever, we're creating our own water from within. How does that happen? Well, it's probably something alchemical, isn't it? Something etheric, alchemical, energetic, metaphysical, becoming physical. So through this process, our body sustains itself. And that's why people can live essentially off, sunlight, should they choose. It's pretty extreme, but it's only extreme until we rewire our presence, our consciousness, our energy, our nervous system to work in such a way, right? It's only extreme until we let loose the conditioning and programming that makes it so, that makes us believe it so or consider it to be that. Because everything is essentially, non-physical, metaphysical before it becomes physical. When we choose the fuel, the external inputs, whether it's food, water, sunlight, breathing, and then other forms of fuel that are more of the cognitive, psychological inputs, right? The entertainment, the books, the research, the communication, intercommunication between people and relating to others. That shared energy is also, a fuel source of sorts. But from within us is that inexhaustible, what I've spoken about, what I believe to be an inexhaustible fuel source from our, our heart center, our original spark, that creative fractal of all that is, that, animated this avatar in the first place and allowed it to develop into a body, into a person, into the idea of an individuated personality, identity, existence. And that energy source is inexhaustible. So, of course, it's up to us how we utilize it. And it occurred to me, and I was reminded this morning as I was waking up and going to sleep and trying to, I don't sleep terribly well, or I have a bizarre sleeping habit where I wake up multiple times and have multiple different dreams in the morning. And occasionally there's a rodent or something in the ceiling that needs to be taken care of that decides to come in the wee hours, probably to sleep away the day. Kind of annoying, but they just happen to find the ceiling above the bedroom wherever I happen to move, which is hilarious and infuriating at the same time. Regardless, these disturbances, that we have to contend with that can interrupt and disrupt our sleep. But as I was waking up, I was thinking about the energy and how we can misappropriate it or have it misappropriated by others, or the ideas and things that we put into our field and the ideas that are imposed upon us. Things like worry, panic, anxiety, fear, all of these ideas that can fall under the idea of stress, right? And there's good stress and bad stress. And you could argue that all stress is good stress in a way if it's leading you to do something, to learn something, to change behavior, to adopt different ways of thinking, to adapt to different environments. Fair enough. We are incredibly adaptable, right? But that fundamental underlying energy, that initial force, that, you could reduce it to idea of consciousness and such, but I'm thinking more in the practical manner and perspective, the way that we actually utilize this particular energy, this fountain of inexhaustible power that exists within us. It's the same energy that can be used to explore ideas of love, happiness, fulfillment, being productive, being creative, walking, hiking, at every level. It's the same energy that works in the spiritual, emotional, energetic, and physical, right? It's the same. And it's simply upon us to direct it, to consciously be aware of how and where we are directing it and using it or misusing it. Using it to our benefit, or using it to hurt and harm ourselves. And that's a matter of discernment and awareness and being conscious and observing our own processes, our thoughts, our beliefs, how we're going about using this energy, whether we're being conscious or whether we're going into different spirals and ideas and repetitions and repetitive, spiral thinking that generally leans into the negative, that brings us down as opposed to lifts us up. But again, it's the same energy. It's the same function, regardless of if you're letting it drag you down, wear you out, hurt you, tighten you up, or to release, relax, open you up, and express yourself and spiral upward and outward. And, right, owning your space as opposed to contracting within and hiding and constricting the flow, which we can feel quite physically as a tightness in the chest, a knotted stomach, achy shoulders, because we're breathing only with our chest as opposed to diaphragmatic breathing. All of these things, but these are the physical manifestations of what came several steps before that, right? And it's all based on that same initiatory potential energy that is free and unlimited, and up to us how we choose to utilize it. I think it was a post I saw on Root Cause Protocol on Instagram. Can't remember specifically, but it had to do with healing. And they laid out the idea of spiritual, emotional, energetic, and physical healing. It's multi-layered, right? It's not just the physical. The physical is basically the last iteration, the last step of the whole process. And we have to consider the hierarchy of these things, because we can't heal something and we can't fix anything with inputs and vitamins, nutrients, and lifestyle changes if we can't undo what you would consider perhaps a root cause, which would be the spiritual and emotional and energetic part that ultimately manifested in the physical. That energy that's being used, misused, misdirected, misunderstood, misinterpreted, and misapplied is doing us harm and lodging itself in a particular part of our body. And this manifests in many different ways, including ideas such as cancer and any number of maladies. You could list off a couple of hundred, but they all essentially start in some sort of either spiritual or emotional or energetic sort of place on down that particular chain into the physical. And by that time, it can be quite painful and induce an enormous amount of suffering, and it can become a chronic thing at the same time, because if that energy is persistently being directed in certain ways, it becomes a chronic problem because we're not addressing the initial causative sort of factors, which could be any number of things. And you can call it what you will, and examine for yourself by sitting and really just being with these ideas and energies and thoughts and the stuff that'll emerge once we stop the incessant patterns and the routines and the behaviors, so that the flow can start to normalize and reverse itself to downregulate these pressures psychologically and emotionally, so that it allows your spirit to just rise back up, so that energy can reaffirm itself and start to recycle outwardly, and to address these imbalances, because then you can become aware of them, because you're not tamping down and suppressing and squashing and sitting on these things. You're allowing it to emerge and be exposed and come into your awareness. But it's that same energy source that we choose how to derive power from, how to, right? In a car, you have fuel source, whatever it might be, gasoline or battery, and that's converted through an engine, through some sort of process and mechanism into power, which is what turns the wheels, which is what propels your vehicle, right? Energy is the fuel that goes into the engine. In an internal combustion engine, it, hits a spark, creates an explosion, creates this massive energy, which propels cylinders and things, which moves its way down into the wheels, which propels your vehicle, which then you decide to steer. And these days we can have self-driving vehicles, which is a strange concept when you consider the autonomy and the agency that you're giving away for the idea of convenience and or safety. And surely we can argue either way about that. But the point is, for those of us who grew up before, and before the idea of Teslas and self-driving, this, that, and the other thing, and the automation and the push that these ideas are in some way progress and improvements, is quite hilarious. It's just just more nonsense on top of nonsense of this idea of productivity, progress, and efficiency, and everything else that is pushed by the technocracy as if they're good things and necessary and essential to, improving society and blah, 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 blah. It's all complete fiction. I prefer to be able to drive my own vehicle. And otherwise, why am I on the road? It's one thing to commute and do that, but if you're just commuting to work and such, take the bus or the train. There's no reason to have your own vehicle if you're just going back and forth from the same place every day. Then it would make sense that you shouldn't be stressing out and putting yourself into traffic and all the other things that are just going to wear you down before you even get to that particular place of work or school or what you might be doing. And again, these are hundreds and thousands of different ways that we can misuse this energy, this inexhaustible energy that can fatigue and tire and wear us down in all sorts of these ways that we're unconsciously simply unaware of how we are using this energy and how we are going and acting and behaving and thinking and believing in ways contrary to what is fundamentally true somewhere within us. There's a reason why these repeated thoughts and emotions and ideas cause physical pain. There's a reason why a lot of ideas, beliefs, and impositions and narratives thrown at us cause us suffering and confusion and emotional distress and overall stress, because something about it is inauthentic, disingenuous, it's artificial, it's superficial, it's misleading, it's whatever it is, it's distorted, it is in dissonance with what is natural and real, it's in dissonance with what is authentic, real, and true. And so these are signals that we can pick up on and pay attention to. This is where we develop discernment, and the idea that all of these signals, whether it's in the body, in our energy field, whether it's in our emotional space, our psychological space, whether it's in this greater spiritual idea, all of these layers of experience and expression have an inbuilt signaling system for us, right? All of these things provide us data and feedback and mirroring and information all the time, every second, every breath, every blink of your eye. You have the opportunity to reassess and realign and reconfigure your sense making, right? And to recapture all the multitude of ways that we can be wasting and throwing our energy out haphazardly into all sorts of directions that are simply draining us, fatiguing us, causing us harm, and based on things that are completely false, misleading, artificial, made up in our own minds, fabricated based on, lack of information or education or perspective, whatever it might be. And we live in a world of duality, polarity, contrast, conflict. That's by design, and there's no way to ever fully align everyone, unite, the civilization, as it were, regardless of how many of us there may be. It's impossible and counterproductive to try and pursue the idea of world peace, unity, harmony, because you can't do that without subverting half of what everyone believes at any one time, half of what anyone prioritizes or values. And if you're talking about, potentially billions of people and hundreds of nations, and down and down and down, what kind of hubris or arrogance would you have to be living by to think that you're going to unify all these things, unless you're going to, by extreme force and violence, impose upon everyone else who doesn't necessarily believe what you believe? And who the hell are you to decide what is right and true for everyone? There's basic principle ideas that I talk about and try and explore and uncover and dispel the conditions and ideas and layers of impositions, lies, and distortions around them. What's real, true, and authentic is quite an individual thing. And it might work for us for now, but tomorrow, 10 years, 20 years from now, it might not work anymore. It might not be fully true and authentic anymore, given the nature of the realm. The things that might change, our lives might change, our priorities and our values, our bodies, our minds, everything about us is constantly changing and adapting. But there are some fundamental things, certainly, some fundamental truths that most of us could probably agree on, but not everyone. And it's this idea of the paradox, as usual, right? It's this polarity and duality that allows this reality to exist in the first place. It's not that we're unifying, it's just we're balancing constantly a number of different ideas of opposites and conflict and contrast. Left, right, up, down, black, white, whatever it might be. Masculine, feminine, yin, yang. And that's simply the nature of this realm. And bringing it back to the individual, it's upon us to take the responsibility to understand that we can never be fully joyful, loving, empowered, happy, productive, without also knowing and appreciating and utilizing sad, angry, furious, anxious, fearful, panicking, whatever it might be. Every one of the emotions that exists within us has its opposite. Some of us exercise and experience more on one side of the spectrum than the other at any given time for any number of reasons. So what's important is to be aware of how, again, we're utilizing that energy. Are we spending too much time on one side of the spectrum or the other? Or are we able to reconcile them and find that sort of balancing effect of understanding the opposites and appreciating them both, because both of them are useful, both of them are informative, both of them are constructive and necessary for reality and for our expression in this reality. Both of them are part of us, always and forever, in this lifetime, in this realm, in this type of expression and existence, in this human idea. And that is how we take back our power, our agency, and that potential massive waste of energy that we might be causing ourselves and repeatedly forcing ourselves to endure, perhaps unnecessarily, because we get stuck in the patterns and the routines and the repetition, and we get stuck in paradigms and belief systems, and we get stuck in sort of traumatic response things, and not healing these age-old and lifelong ideas that keep us stuck in certain patterns that may go right back to our childhood and perhaps even further, even in utero. There are certain things that can stick with us that we may not be aware of until we become aware of them. And that only happens when we can allow that energy to start flowing in, out, inward to the outward. There's no end to the information, the inputs and the ideas that's going to come from the machine, the system, from the outward in, from the ideas, from the belief systems of others, from the education, the institutions. The world outside of us is always going to offer us explanations and ideas and possibilities of what could be, and we'll try to integrate some of these ideas and try to make sense of the world through them, but it may never actually solve that and satisfy that curiosity within us, because that truth and authenticity and the real knowing and wisdom only ever comes from within. And that's where we can also remind ourselves that that energy that we are using and abusing for good or bad, within and without, is also for us to decide how to use and to become aware of how we may be harming ourselves in misusing it, or unconsciously allowing certain programs, paradigms, conditions to play out again and again and again, week after week, month after month, year after year, until we become aware of them, to be able to dispel them and rewrite, reclaim, whatever you want to call it, to take again that agency and autonomy back from whatever condition, circumstance, program, or potentiality we've been playing out on endless repeat for however long. It doesn't matter. So it's the same energy. It's the same energy that we can practically see and observe in our hands and our fingers, that moves blood around our system, that creates and maintains and regenerates the systems within us, and utilizes those electrical sources, those water sources, and everything else that enables our avatar to exist and function in the first place. It's the same energy that goes up into the energy field, up into the emotional, psychological, up into the spiritual. It's the same energy. So we just have to become aware of how we're using it and why, and how to take it back. Have a good one.
It's been coming down every other day, but they tell me we are in drought season. That's not my story, not my reality. No matter what you force my eyes to see, and the sky is falling right on top of me, but they tell me it's for the greater good. That's not my story, not my